The question is helping an art or is it a science? And the answer is yes. That is, it's been studied rigorously, scientifically, and a lot of the science is useful. But it's useful only to the degree that it is taken by the helper and geared towards the needs of the client. And that is an art rather than a science. So this book is something that should not be copied slavishly at all. The best helpers, I think, are, to use a current word, entrepreneurial in their approach. They take it and adapt it to the clients. For instance, you have a different set of, you have a different audience from the audience that I have.
Now, just to give a little bit of context here, myself and Gerry are kind of like chalk and cheese, all right?
Yes.
We come from completely contrasting backgrounds. There is a 50-year age gap between myself and Gerry. Now, I hope that Gerry doesn't take offence when I say that around about 3 months ago, I was starting to get concerned with my age, fast approaching 40. Then Gerry gets in touch. Now, Gerry has historically been communicating and teaching these principles that I read over a decade ago, first time round, to people in educational establishments, universities, college campuses, and other various students in an academic context around the world. Whereas what I've done, I've taken them, broken them down, simplified them in some areas, and shared them with everyone else. Well, we've had to work out our own strategy for communicating over the last few days, and it's not been the easiest of processes. But here's the thing, if we couldn't learn how to communicate...
Anybody can.
Well, this is it. We've managed to break through to very different language barriers and perspectives and things like this to ultimately communicate well with each other.
And I think we both have important issues to make.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Even though we work with different populations, to use a scientific word.
Now, what we're kind of talking about here is we're talking about helping on a geographical scale, all right? To help you perhaps even develop a vision for what's potentially going to be possible for you at some point in the future. Because we can help people on a one-on-one relational level. We can help our own families, our loved ones, our spouse, or we can help in the organizations, the communities, the societies in which we live, or we can play a part in helping on a global scale, which is now what myself and Gerry have come here to attempt to do, to give you a few insights and perhaps lead you to see how it is that you might be able to use some of these principles and apply them in the context of your own life. But communication skills, Gerry.
The communication skills are the tools that we use to deliver the services of stages 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the helping framework. Communication skills, unfortunately, in society are taken for granted. Societies tend not to find ways of introducing kids to an effective set of communication skills. This would be disaster for helpers, because helpers use communication skills, first of all, to establish the relationship with the people they're trying to help, and secondly, to deliver whatever the framework can deliver to help people get what they need or want.
Now, it's 100% important that we understand where many books have been written over the years about communication skills being nothing more than mere techniques or language patterns. What we're hoping to illustrate onto you is that communication isn't just what we say, it's also how well and effectively we listen. Because listening is just as important part of communication, if not more important than speaking within itself. Have you ever had a parent or an elder at some point in your life who said, "Young man, young lady, you have 2 of these and 1 of these in that order for a reason, because you should be doing twice as much of this as what you are of that. Well, I've been getting told that my whole life. Gerry, did anyone ever tell you that?
No, I was a good boy, unlike you.
I just didn't listen. So.
Anyway, all right, communication skills. Where do we start? Well, we start logically by listening to the people we are trying to help. But how do we listen to people? We listen actively. A lot of us, for instance, I think, tend to listen, but maybe not to hear what the other person is saying. So what do we need to do, not just to listen, but to hear and to process what we hear in such a way that it serves the needs of the people we're trying to help?
What we're kind of talking about here, we're talking about listening with intentionality and purpose. Because when we listen with intentionality and purpose, it's then and only then that we're able to hear. Now, just to give you an example, myself and Gerry are sitting in a studio that's relatively, I think, around about 80% soundproofed. All right, now, we have one of the walls that isn't particularly well soundproofed. So, what I can hear in the background is another gentleman on his mobile phone. And this man who's speaking on his mobile phone must have one of the manliest voices in Scotland. This voice is bellowing right through the walls. Now, Gerry's okay because Gerry's getting a little bit hard of hearing these days, all right? However, I am very, very acute in my hearing still, and it's a bit of a distraction for me. But I'm telling you this, because I can hear this, I'm not actively listening to it. Right, but if I was actively listening to that voice in the room next door, I would actually be able to fine-tune my listening to hear what he's saying. So whilst I can hear I can hear the noise, I'm not listening to the words being spoken. Therefore, I do not understand the message that he's communicating. Now, this is a principle within itself. Sometimes we can listen without hearing. Sometimes we can hear without listening. It's only when we listen with the intent to hear that we're better able to understand and relate to other people.
All right, why are we listening at all? We're listening in order to understand the issues that the client or the other person that we're trying to help is talking about. So listening needs to serve what I call empathic understanding. That is an understanding of what the other person is saying, not from my point of view, not from my frameworks, but from his or her point of view or his or her framework. All right? Unless I listen carefully to the person I'm talking to, rather listening to what's going on in my own mind, I can make all sorts of mistakes in trying to help another person.
Now, when Gerry mentioned that word, internal framework, another word that I would use to define this is frame of reference, our frame of reference. Now, think about when we are having conversations with people, could be anyone, family members. Think about a conversation you've had with someone when someone has said something or they've reacted or responded to you in a certain way, and then you automatically take offence. How is it that you would know that the message that this person has just communicated to you was meant to offend you? And the response is, you wouldn't. Sometimes it's not other people. In fact, I'm going to boldly say here that more often than not, it's not other people that offend us and upset us in life. It's we ourselves that offend and upset ourselves. When we respond more to our internal frame of reference, which is our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our perspectives, our worldviews, our opinions, all the stuff that happens on the inside. If we're not focused intently on listening to and hearing the words that are being communicated or the words that aren't being communicated in those people whom we're interacting with, we stand at risk of listening more to ourselves and what's actually just happening inside us. And when this happens, we're choosing disconnect over connect in a relationship. And this is where some relationships begin to go south.
So when we listen, what do we listen for, or what do we listen to? Well,
good question, Gerry.
The client's story. is the main theme that we're listening to? What is the client's story from the client's point of view? Not from somebody else's, not from my point of view, but the other person's point of view, the person we're trying to help. And as we listen to the story, we'll also hear clients' points of view. We may disagree with clients' points of view, but that's not the issue. We have to first understand clients' points of view. What else do we listen to? We listen to the decisions that are emerging from clients. We listen to their intentions. We listen to everything that is relevant to the issues that the client is talking about.
Now, it's interesting because sometimes we can focus innately on the words that are being spoken by a person. Gerry's already mentioned the word listening empathically. And when we're listening empathically, what we're actually listening out for is sometimes the emotions that underpin the words that are being spoken. Say, for example, myself and Gerry were to come into disagreement right now, because this has never happened, has it, Gerry? Oh, well, it has once or twice, just a little bit, because we have different frames of reference. All right, so let's just say that myself and Gerry were to have a really big disagreement right now. We say, Gerry, I don't understand, I disagree with what you're saying right now. And it's not that I would necessarily be disagreeing with what Gerry's saying or not saying, it's just I would be disagreeing with what I'm assuming Gerry is saying or not saying.
And I'm saying things like, I'm not going to let you bully me.
That's it. And I'm not going to let you boss me around, Mr. Egan. All right? You might be older and wiser than me, but I'm younger and fitter and stronger. There we go.
You didn't use the word fit, I noticed, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. In fairness, you did beat me up that set of step ladders a few weeks ago. So,
anyway,
joking aside.
Yes.
There are multiple ways or multiple levels through which we communicate with people, through the words that we speak. But then there's this emotional connectiveness that we have with people. Think about it. How is it that we tend to determine who's good and who's bad in life?
We have to remember that the other person is looking at us, and what I call empathic presence. Our presence has to be there. We're there for the other person that we're trying to help, all right? But the other person is also listening to us, picking up all sorts of signals. So everything that we do should be in sync with the kind of empathy we're trying to have with the other person, the other person's points of view, the other person's intentions, or whatever. So we're reading them in a certain sense, but we have to remember they're also reading us.
So the question that you might be asking right now is, so how is it that we therefore then go on to start better connecting with others? Well, what I would just like to give reference to here, a very, very simple idea in response to listening. All right, now Gerry's referenced active listening. I'm going to just build upon that just a little bit and say that there's actually two reasons why we would listen. We will listen to hear and understand a person, or we're going to listen to respond. All right, when we're listening to respond, we're not really listening. We're just listening for the gap in the conversation so that we can give voice to what we're already thinking about, which means that we're most likely going to be completely missing what this other person's saying. When we're listening to understand, it means that we're listening to understand. Full stop. It means that our response, what we're about to say next, is irrelevant because we don't have anything that we want to say next. We're listening for an appropriate point in the conversation to respond. And what we're hopefully doing here is demonstrating this on some level.
And from my point of view, the best way to listen is not just being quiet and listening all the time, as it were, but to help the client engage in a dialogue. In a dialogue, what happens? You speak, I speak. You speak, I speak. Because if I engage in dialogue, I can constantly check my understanding of what the client is saying.